All right, so we are officially recording now. So let's talk a little bit about the game plan for today. So in terms of I guess the overall game plan, we got really two goals to dig into here this afternoon. The first of which is to wrap up the typographical poster project. So we'll take a look at those today. I know that we critiqued the concepts on those last week. So this will be maybe perhaps a little bit more of a presentation, but certainly, if there is any feedback that I can offer you, anything you think about potentially tweaking between now and when you get into your portfolio class, I'll certainly throw that out there for you guys to consider. And then the second goal for today is to transition into project 3. Which will be the first time in this class that we're doing sort of a larger scale project. If you think about like the first project as well as the second project, they were really just like a single document that we're working in. And realistically, they were projects that could have been created pretty easily in Illustrator or InDesign. Neither one of them necessarily offered a clear advantage. That will change with this project, and that we're digging into a multi-page project. Very much a layout project that revolves around type. And we'll get into these details on that, but this will be the first project that we very much are going to be focused on using InDesign specifically for the creation of this project. So that's the game plan. I have got a lot of stuff that I want to go through though with you guys in terms of kind of gearing you up and getting you ready for the project. And both examples that I've got digital, and then I'm going to, at some point this afternoon, I will turn my camera on and share with you guys some physical examples of what we'll be doing as well. But why don't we take care of part 1, and we will take a look at those posters. I've really been looking forward to seeing what direction you guys went in terms of pushing these, hopefully from an experimental standpoint. All right, let's see here. Oh, Kelly, you may have, it's possible maybe you put it in the wrong folder. I've got a part 2 folder set up. It's just called part 2 PDF and InDesign files.
Okay.
And if you could take a moment, just drop in your both a PDF file as well as your InDesign file, that would be awesome.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh yeah, no worries, no worries. Trust me, if that's the worst thing that happens today, we are all good. I know I've given you guys the warning about like my dog potentially making strange noises in the background. I gave her this like really large bone today, and she is like pacing back and forth with it in her mouth, like from room to room. So if you hear lots of walking, and then hopefully she just settles down and starts to chew it, that's kind of what's going on.
Oh, that's okay.
Awesome, there we go. I see the PDF in that folder now, so that is awesome. Thank you. And it looks flattened. That's even better. Perfect. All right, there we go. Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah.
All right, cool. So I'm going to take a moment then, and I'll just download these so we're not necessarily having to preview them through the Google Drive. Sometimes it can scramble those PDFs up a little bit. Okay, cool. I love that that diagonal that you brought into it, Kelly.
Oh, thank you.
Let's see. I'm gonna. I wish I could kind of like view this in just a slightly. It doesn't really give me much of an option in terms of scale on this. It's kind of either a little bit too big or almost a little bit too small.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Just a moment. Do Acrobat. My Acrobat's a little bit unstable though on this computer. It does have a tendency to crash. Let's see. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, that Yep, and there we go. All right, well, we'll do our best just using
Oh yeah.
a preview. It's not bad. I'll zoom in obviously just for like reading some of the text if we need to. But yeah, I wanted to mention to you that I definitely prefer the gradient you've brought into this. I love that you have maintained that really strong, almost like block or like L-like structure for the individual blocks of text. Like we talked about last week, I thought that was actually a real strength. And it works even within the diagonal. I mean, even though the diagonal is sort of working in one direction compared to like the vertically set text, I really think they sit in that area very nicely. And again, I think based on what we talked about last week, I think you established a nice, a very nice typographical hierarchy using, like, in this case, you didn't necessarily use size to create that hierarchy, which is okay. Because, right, like we discussed, there are many different avenues that you can go with, color or weight, or in this case, putting the text inside of like these black boxes. That alone just creates a really strong like visual anchor for us. And I think that looks fantastic. One small thing to think about between now and portfolio, and it may be preview that's doing this, because every now and again preview will get a little bit weird, especially at like odd percentages that are viewing. But it does look like the type in the second name here, the one for Julie Vargman, Tuesday, October 9th, it does look like that is perhaps bold compared to the other three like dates. It's a small thing, Kelly. It's nothing to necessarily sleep over right now, but I would definitely make a tweak between now and portfolio to make sure that they are either all bolded or all unbolded. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is like bold, because it is the only type also that is like right up against the right and left sides of the boxes versus all the ones that look unbolded or regular. There's a nice comfortable amount of like padding on either side. So again, something to consider and think about making a tweak on. Now, with that being said, talking about bolding type, maybe something to consider also between now and portfolio is that the names here, perhaps, as well as like the studio that they come from, maybe consider bolding those. And the reason why I say that, I mean, the yellow actually reads pretty well against that blue. But the blue and the red are both at a level of saturation wherein when that red sits on top of the blue, there's almost a little bit of vibration that's happening. And that can happen when you've got like two colors that sort of share the same level of saturation. But that is something I would recommend. And I'm recommending, even though we can read the yellow really well, I would still bold both the yellow and the red names, just so that like, every other one isn't bold. It'll feel a little bit more consistent from that standpoint. I think the only other suggestion that I would make for you to consider also between, again, small stuff to tweak between now and portfolio, is I would say also try and maintain consistent margins across all three of these. And what I mean by that is that, like, if you look at the first three, actually there's an issue on the second one, but like here, if you look at like number one, like the one for September 12th and the one for December 4th, the spacing that's happening right in here is fantastic on the first and the second one. It looks nice and consistent. Now this spacing might also be correct, but I feel like that the name in the studio is dropped down a little bit. I bet you if we dragged in a guideline, that would fall a little bit short versus on number one and number two, they align really nicely, which I prefer. Like, this is a nice tight grid that you've created here. The spacing and the margins in your gutters look nice and consistent. I think all of that looks good. So that would be something that you'll want to just, consider tweaking, especially for portfolio, right? Like, those are the little things that art directors are really going to be looking for to make sure that, like, that you're aware of, like, just making sure all those things are absolutely perfect. let's see here. And then on the one that caught my attention, that kind of brought me to all those, was this one right here, this red one for Wednesday, November 2nd. You'll notice how like this one, there really isn't any of that padding or margins. Like these are almost right up at the top. In fact, I think that the studio name is a couple of pixels taller. So I'm really nitpicking here, but I want you to definitely be aware of these things for portfolio, because those are the little details that we absolutely have to nail inside of your finalized portfolio. But again, I definitely agree with you. I think that the design took a nice step forward. I think that diagonal makes all the difference in the world in terms of just creating a more interesting composition than the columns that we had last week. I think that you still maintain the integrity of all the things that I thought were real strengths from last week as well. You know, the strong header. I love the you know, the tilted and vertical type that you've got here. You were very playful in terms of the arrangements of the type and the size of them, and some really bold color choices. All of those things I think are fantastic. So all in all, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that the project took a really nice step forward for you. Nice job on it.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to take a look real quick at Zoom and just see. Cool, Cam, you were able to join us. Good to see you in class.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. I know you know we talked about it. I know that it's tough for you to make it right on time with your schedule, so no worries at all. But I just wanted to peek up there and see real quick if you were here. Just I was going to give you feedback regardless because I could always record it, but I wanted to just see real quick. All right, cool. Let's give this a look. Cool. So Ken, it looks like you went the direction of adding a diagonal into this as well, which,
Yeah,
again, I very much like that. I think the biggest thing that I'd love for you to think about between now and when you are in portfolio is just consistency. And when I say consistency, I mean consistency in like the size of the type within your diagonal.
I think that was like I shifted it a bunch to try and make it fit.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. That's also with some of the words being broken up. I've noticed that now.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah, I think, I mean, the suggestions I have for you are going to be pretty straightforward. I think what we want to consider is just making sure that all of the text blocks are consistent in size. So it looks like the Julie Bardman one up top here is the smallest of them all. And because of that, that's what I would sort of use as your baseline for the others. So whatever size the header is here from Julie Bardman one, that's the same size that I would use for all of the headers. Same thing for her studio. You know, aside from the fact that obviously like certain things are dropping, like the communication, the S kind of falling down is definitely something that we want to avoid. It just ends up coming across as it's just not consistent, and because of that, it sort of lacks that professional polish within this area.
Yeah.
But again, just very much follow what you've already established here. The cool thing about this, Cam, is that the answer's already here. It's just a matter of following these sizes. So I know that once you drop down to that size, that you know the issue of that S will fix itself. I actually really like the diagonal that you've established here and here. I think those are very nice. Same thing here. And I totally understand what's happening with the Julie Bardman, and that, like, you know, you're kind of dealing with part of a diagonal and part of a you know, a vertical line there. But I do think that once you shrink these others down, you'll have plenty of room to establish Julie Bardman on a diagonal, probably like over on the right hand side. It might be nice if you had you know, two of the blocks type sort of like left aligned against the like on that diagonal, and then two right aligned. So I think again, it'll be a pretty straightforward fix for you. Might not be exactly though what you want to hear, because I'm sure that there was some, you know, some time that went into establishing these diagonals with lots of returns. But again, I think that it'll certainly be worth your time. Within the Bardman one, it does look like there's like a double space in between Julie and Bardman, so that'd be another thing you want to take care of. And then certainly within this project and really all of the projects over the course of the semester, what we want to do is we really want to be careful of things like widows and orphans. So this would be an example of a widow right here. So it's just a single word all by itself on the bottom. This can be, addressed by, well, there's a few ways you can do this. In fact, I'm actually going to show you guys a few ways during our demo today. But it can be done with changing the kerning or the tracking. It can be changed by opening up the the width of the text box here. And then there's an option actually inside of InDesign that I will show you guys as well. It's literally just a checkbox that can help solve these types of things. But even like this would be considered a widow right here, sort of like an individual letter kind of like floating all on its own underneath its original block of type. I don't necessarily mind like the word America being on its own, just because it's a longer word and visually it's not really, it doesn't come off as odd to me there. I think also because the lines of type right above it are not much longer. But again, like when we get down here for magazine, this one definitely feels off just because of the other lines of type being so long. Let's see. Yeah, and in addition on this one too, it looks like there's some returning that needs to be taken care of. It looks like this sentence almost gets broken in half, like where we say, the firm has since, and then hard break. So that ends up like this sort of elongated like negative space there. So a few small things on there, Cam. I think that between now and portfolio, if you sit down one evening and just really put some time into working on these 4 blocks of type, you'll get where you need to with this. Let's see here. You definitely took it in a different direction in terms of the overall color scheme. Which I like. I think this is fantastic. It very much mirrors some of what we're familiar with in like the Swiss design that you were going for with this, where you've got like black, white, and like a very saturated color, So, yeah, and it's nice. I like that you kind of you didn't go with like a crazy deep red either. It almost borders more on orange. Because like white, black, and red can be a really aggressive color combination. So just sort of, warming that a little bit and taking it into the realm of the oranges, I think kind of diffuses what otherwise could be a really aggressive color scheme. Cool. So guys, I will oftentimes then for our larger projects like this, make these, on the final versions of these, make those comments sort of regarded towards portfolio, even though in this class, we're not working on your portfolio. When you get to your portfolio class, these will likely be projects that will build the foundation of your portfolio. So I'm going to throw those suggestions out there for you guys. I've been a portfolio instructor at a few different art colleges for about 18 years. So I've got a lot of experience with dealing with students who are coming in with work that is solid, but maybe needs some tweaks. So I'll always try to relate it in that fashion if I can. All right, guys. Well, congrats. You wrapped up the typographical poster project, and we're now going to move on to bigger things. Quite literally, the next project is really like your first big project that we'll be working on over the course of the next several weeks. And I'd like to, I guess, first and foremost, introduce you to it. And actually, while I'm doing that too, we'll talk a little bit about the content area inside of our D2L class and give you an idea of what's happening for the rest of the week as well. But in there are several resources that I want to point out to you guys, including the assignment sheet, and then external resources that I linked to. So let's see here. So I actually need to rename this, but I need to rename that for you guys for week 4. But the content itself is all in place and relevant to what we are doing here. So there's a few things we're going to be going over the course of this week. In here, I've got the assignment sheet that we're going to talk about. What I actually just had talked about a moment ago, Cam, in your project. There's a link here to an explanation of what widows and orphans are that kind of goes a little bit beyond what I just discussed. There are two documents or two links here for tutorials on managing spreads and pages in InDesign, which I have a feeling at this point you guys know how to do, but just in case, I wanted those in there because that's very much, it's a specific assignment parameter. So just in case you don't know how to do that, you've got a couple of resources. One will take you to a breakdown of it on Adobe's help website. And then the other is a video to it. We'll take a look at both of those in just a few moments. And I put links out to specific projects that I found that I thought were excellent examples to reference for the project that I'm about to give to you guys. So let's dig into that. Let's see. So the project book project sheet. So the type of book that you guys are going to be putting together for this project is something that's called a type specimen book. Is that a term that you've ever heard before, or have you guys ever seen a type specimen book?
I've
No,
heard
I
of the
haven't.
term.
Okay. Cool. So we'll spend some time kind of breaking this down just so that you've got a solid foundation. There are, of course, like anything, there are variations between type specimen books, and those variations will really usually boil down to like what the purpose of that particular type specimen book is and what the audience is. So I'm going to very much try and go about this from a common denominator standpoint and talk about the things that are very common to type specimen books. The examples that we'll look at, the digital ones, are all pretty consistent. The physical examples I've got a number of type specimen books sitting here next to me from a number of foundries that we'll discuss. But essentially, guys, a type specimen book is a book that is used in some cases, like what we'll be using ours for is more of an informational type specimen book, but more modern versions of them are definitely more promotional in nature, and that they're sent out to graphic designers from foundries to sort of introduce new fonts or popular fonts with the intent of, certainly looking for designers to purchase those typefaces. So they put together books to show the typefaces in action, show all the possibilities. So oftentimes they'll show like the different weights, the different characters, but more so it's an opportunity for the designers just to design and have some fun, and again, to show the typeface within different types of design, so that more or less showing a font off, I think. So what we'll be doing over the next few weeks is designing and producing a 16-page specimen book for a typeface. The type specimen is a booklet that demonstrates the range of a typeface applied to headlines and text in a variety of sizes. And there's some standard ways of doing that that I'll talk about with you guys as well. But each variation of the typeface should be labeled on the page. Type specimens have existed for centuries to help designers pick a font for a project. Type specimens today can be wildly flamboyant or classical in their approach. And I'm going to show you guys examples of both wildly flamboyant and classical examples. So for this project, you're going to want to choose a typeface for your project that has a substantial number of variations. You might have heard me use the term over the course of the semester, a robust font family. That's very much what you want to have here, is a typeface that has lots of different variations. So I've listed a few here, but by no means are you limited to these. These are just examples, and I'll run through some examples with you guys as well here in just a few moments. But Universe would be a great example. Helvetica, Caslon, Baskerville, Garamond, Futura, or Boduni. Those are all very, very robust, substantial typeface families. They've got lots of variations. And most of these have anywhere from 12 to 16 different variations in weight, or some being italicized, some not. But what I would recommend that you guys do is first and foremost, look at a variety of typefaces before you choose one. Don't necessarily just choose the very first one that comes to mind. And then make sure that you have access to a good cut of the face. So that would be the full type family. Reason why I recommend that is because like fonts like Futura, for example, that's a very robust font family. But it can be difficult to acquire that whole font family unless you purchase it. Okay? So I'll certainly point you guys to some free font families. But you'll want to make sure before you choose a font family that you have potentially the full type family to use at your disposal. Because to succeed at this, to put together a 16-page book, you're going to want lots of variations of this. So if you are looking for body copy for some of your pages to demonstrate how the font looks, I've put a link here. You can gather text for your project by visiting this Wikipedia entry on typography and using like the initial entry. And this would be for pages that you'd want to have body copy. Now, again, I'm not saying you have to do this. I would be fine with you pulling body copy from other sources, but this is a great way to potentially just, grab some type that's relevant to, the world of typography and use that as your body copy. I mean, you can certainly, use other type on here as well. But again, I'm not saying you have to do that, but it would be a quick and easy way to generate some body copy. Let's see here. So the size of this book will be designed at 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches. So potentially square pages. And when open, the book will be 5.5 by 11 inches. And I'm open to you choosing a different size if you have a reason. If you can explain to me why you think it's better, I'm all ears. I'm going to show you guys especially when we look at the physical specimens, you're going to see all sorts of different sizes. So this is just an initial suggestion or jumping off point. But again, I'm certainly open to you adding some variation. So the individual steps that we have to complete this project are listed here. We'll talk about those steps. We'll also talk about the contents of your book, because I don't want you necessarily to just think I'm expecting you guys to generate these 16 pages without any direction. So I will certainly let you know like what needs to be in the book. And then again, I'll start to back this up with some examples. But step one is going to be to gather your typeface. So essentially download a TTF or OTF font of it in several weight and styles. And then again, gather the text you plan on using in this book in either a Word or an InDesign file from the Wikipedia. Then begin step two, begin designing. So is there a grid that you're going to use? And I would strongly recommend that you guys base your book on a grid. Some of the pages may not necessarily need to have a grid, but you definitely want to think about some of them having one. I'm definitely okay with you thinking experimentally on this project. Again, some of the examples I'm going to show you are highly experimental. Others are much more functional. So research the librarian, which essentially what I'm asking you to do is research the font foundry or the designer of the font, okay? And submit any information that you have, again, into your roughs folder. And then step 4, draft your ideas. Submit those into the roughs review folder as well. Okay? We'll go through a critique on this. We'll critique those roughs. You guys will have an opportunity to then to submit a final revised version of it. For your draft, what I'll be looking for you is for you to have roughly half of the book designed. Many of the pages are going to be duplicates, and there's just going to be some variations to them. So I don't necessarily want you guys to invest the energy of designing out all of the pages when there's going to be tweaks that need to be made. I'd rather you design the pages that are sort of individual, and then we can go through the critique process. You can make any adjustments you need to, and then you can extrapolate out the remaining pages. So the contents of your book. You should somewhere in your book, it could be on its own page, have the designer's name. So that would be the designer of the font, their birth date, death date if applicable, and then basic biographical information about the designer. Basic, guys. A few sentences. You know, you could maybe say a couple of sentences. We really don't need paragraphs about the person, unless you feel like if you find somebody that has a rather robust typographical history. Cool. You could, certainly, take advantage of that. But what we want to avoid is run on pages of like the person's biography of, when they were a child and their, all their personal life and stuff. I mean, I would say try and stick to, contributions to the design world. It would be awesome if you could find a quote from the designer. So number 2, quote from the designer or quote about the designer or typeface if you're choosing an older typeface. And so it doesn't necessarily have to come from the designer. If the font was designed a few centuries ago, it's easy enough to find modern quotes from modern designers. That would be fine. All right, you are obviously going to want to have a page that's dedicated to the typeface name, the classification. So like a geometric sans serif. So geometric sans serif, an example of that would be something like Futura or Universe or like Helvetica. Those are all like classic geometric sans serifs. Slab serif, etc. And we can talk about some of those, like, I'm not sure how familiar you are with like those terms, like slab serif, for example. You guys know what serif-based type is. Slab serifs are basically like block-like serifs. They don't taper. A really classic example would be the typeface Rockwell. I'll show you an example of one of the specimen books for Rockwell, so you get an idea of what that would look like. And then potentially what year the typeface was designed. Most fonts have some type of a historical context. So like when it was designed, and then like, was it designed to serve a specific purpose? So consider any geographical, cultural, or aesthetic issues at the time of development. We'll do, when we're done looking at the sheet, I'll show you a few examples of like historical contexts of typefaces. This can be a really fun area. Like once you start picking typefaces and like Googling the font and then like the term historical context, you'd be shocked at like the backstories on why a lot of these fonts that we use were made and like what their purpose was for. I think it really like shines a light on a lot of the areas of typography that we just sort of, take for granted. Number 5, discuss formal qualities of the typeface, like distinguishing features, geometry, shape, weight, stress, etc. Again, I'll show you some examples of that. Step number 6, you're going to do a one-page dedicated to hand lettering of your font. So based on page 124 of your textbook, what you'll do is you'll launch Illustrator, typeset a word in your font, and then trace it using the pen tool, brush tool, or pencil tool. There can certainly be a little looseness to it. It's okay, like it doesn't necessarily have to be completely mechanical. That kind of defeats the purpose. Otherwise, we could just take the font and convert it over to a shape. So I'd like it very much to kind of have a hand drawing kind of feel to that. And then also consider doing a variation of an actual hand drawing of your font. Print out a word in your font, then trace it using an actual pencil on a layer of tracing paper on top. Scan that, import it. You'll see some examples of what that looks like as well, and what I'm going to show you guys. Okay. So that's potentially the stuff that I'm saying at a minimum you want in your book. Now, spread out across multiple pages. That's 7 of your 16 pages right there. You'll find then that the remaining pages will generally be either examples of the font laid out in different sizes or different weights, or laid out in different designs. And again, I'm going to show you lots of examples of these to kind of like fill that in your head in case that's not necessarily making sense. These are some of these are fairly experimental. Others are a little bit more on the practical side. But I'm going to show you lots of examples. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of these right here, but this is actually very common. You'll see this in a lot of the examples I will show you today, where there will be like a paragraph or even just a sentence that's repeated in the font. And then there will be a number to the side of it that shows what point size that line of type was typed out at. I would strongly recommend at least having a few versions of that within your book for some of the different weights. That's very, very typical in a type specimen book. Let's look at some of these examples though, to kind of fill in some of the gaps of what, because I have a feeling you're still probably wondering what some of this stuff means. Let's look at some visual examples. And once we've done that, we can open it up to questions and give you guys a solid idea then of where we're going with this. So let me back up real quick. Let's see. I'm gonna take you guys through. These are just 5 examples that I thought were really, really well done. I found all of these on Behance. So some of these are student work. Most of these I think are actually student-based work. So we'll start with, I mean, we don't necessarily have to go in any specific order. I could start up here with Baskerville and kind of go from there. Actually, I want to open that up in its own window. And before we dig into this and transition into this, give me just like not even 10 seconds here away from my computer. Okay, so this is a book on Baskerville, which is a serif font, and when used in its italicized version, has a very sort of classical script feel as well. So this is the cover. The cover design for your project will constitute the first of your 16 pages. So there will be a front and back cover, and each of those does count as a page. So in this case, the designer has chosen to use some extremely blown up versions of some of the letter forms overlapping on top of each other to almost create like an ornamental design. But you'll find that this type specimen book here has a just a really nice classical look. If the details aren't looking great to you via my Zoom feed, feel free, guys, to open these up on your own computer as well, because they're really, really nice examples. So here is a table of contents. So some of these examples I found were designed by folks not in English. Okay, so we can't necessarily read what those are saying, but you can still tell that it's a table of contents, and you can still clearly make out the typographical hierarchy. I love this, like, this just beautiful sort of collage of letter forms here they included. So many of the designers in the digital examples, as well as the physical examples, will have pages that just have like sort of experimental typographical compositions. You'll notice that over and over again in a lot of these. Now this one spans 2 pages, and this would be, this would count for, something like this would count for 2 pages within your project. Here's a history page about John Baskerville, who is the designer of the font. Again, really nice, creative, use of columns sort of wrapping around these letter forms. And again, all of the letter forms throughout this entire book are all Baskerville. And that would be something as well you want to consider, is in your type specimen book, I would expect that all of the type, all of it, I mean, right down to the folio numbers in the bottom corners, we want to make sure that those are all in the font or variations of that font that you've chosen. Okay. This would also be the first project that I would be okay with you guys starting to incorporate images if you felt that would be beneficial. So whether it would be images of the designer, or images perhaps that that you use to as backgrounds perhaps of some designs. Again, you'll see some examples of that. But I know the previous two projects, I've strictly forbidden you guys from using images. That they had to be, just like absolutely typographical and nothing more. This project does start to open things up a bit. You'll notice in this book, as well as a lot of the examples that I've got that I will show you, the physical ones, that the color palettes are fairly limited. Not always. You'll see some that are pretty out there, but generally they are very monochromatic in nature. So we've got pretty much like this teal, this black, and that's it for the colors within this book. So again, this digs into the history. Again, basketball being a very old typeface that was literally created back in the days of the print press. This discusses the history of why this typeface was designed the way that it was to accommodate a little bit more history. When choosing a really old typeface like this, there is the opportunity, obviously, for a fairly rich history. Okay, so now we're digging into part 2 of this. So this would be a wonderful example of showing some of the like the technical aspects of the typeface, discussing traits of the serifs. And this is oftentimes information that you can find pretty easily on some of these typefaces. In other case, though, you can just make some observations yourself. Here's like literally a breakdown of all of this, and again referring to like a little legend or key here. Again, digging into some of the basics of the anatomy of the type. All right, so this is very common, and I would very much expect this within your book, is we're going to want to see an example of each and every version of the font family, essentially. So, show us what it looks like in regular, italics, bold, any of the versions that it comes with. We want to be able to see what those look like. Okay. Oftentimes, then that is accompanied by the name of that version of the font, as well as what size it's being shown in. That's important to have that listed. And again, I like how the designer broke this up, rather than having a second page that also has those listed there. We're breaking it up just with a simple design that, again, just I wouldn't necessarily call that experimental, but it's not necessarily functional like we're seeing here. I guess that's kind of where I'm going with that. Let's see here. Talking a little bit about basketball in Times New Roman and comparing and contrasting the different typefaces. That's not something that's a requirement in this project, but certainly could be something that you consider if maybe you find a write-up that kind of details some of this information and you think you'd like to show that. You're welcome to. Okay, so here it is. They're showing this typeface in use. So in the Kate Spade logo or the American Gangster logo or Canada and so on and so forth, the Metropolitan Opera. More examples of it in use, body copy use, in a website drop-down menu, on a business card, on a t-shirt. Cool. So again, this is one I think really, really beautiful example. But so as we begin to look through these guys, you're going to notice certainly from book to book, there are some things that are done differently, but you're going to definitely notice some common denominators between these as well. And those are the things I want you guys to kind of keep your eyes out for. It's like when you start seeing things happening over and over again. Okay, well, let's take a look at Universe next. This is one of my favorite typefaces. So this is like Universe is a typeface by Adrian Frugier. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, I must admit, but yeah, let's kind of break this down. So in this case, there's actually an introduction that this designer has written into the book. Introduction to the typeface. There's a table of contents. And from here, we dig into the history. So the history of Adrian Frugier is pretty impressive. I mean, in terms of early typographers who had an amazing impact on our industry. There's probably none better than Adrian. But again, notice how it's not an overload of information, right? I mean, just some nice short little bursts of type. So this is showing the styles. So it goes from universal compressed to universal condensed, universe regular, universe italics, universe extra black. There's actually many more variations of this font as well. So they're showing characters, both uppercase and lowercase, numerals, punctuation symbols. Here they're showing, again, examples of scale. So you're getting a sentence of type, and then you're getting a point size directly next to it to indicate like what size that is. This is a page that just demonstrates the font. You know, different sizes of the font in different alignments. This breaks down the typeface in terms of like its baseline, its waistline, its X height, all that good stuff, which is certainly something you can consider doing for this. This is something you see in a lot of type specimen books as well. All right, cool. So that was Universe. Let's see, Rockwell. I mentioned earlier, guys, when I used that phrase slab serif. Rockwell is a slab serif font. So the slabs on any kind of slab serif are very block-like, very much just sort of a slab. But Rockwell's it's just an older distinguished font created in the 30s by Monotype. In this case, the designer decided to include a small little blurb about the typeface there. I love this page here. So what the designer did is show every version of the font, but in a functional way, like by putting it into like basically finding a couple of sentences. And then, you can see here, this is the extra bold version. This is the condensed version, bold, italics, condensed, bold italics, another bold italics, light, regular, bold. So again, all the versions of the typeface sort of in action there. So that's one way that can be done. Again, oftentimes though, it's done in a more traditional format of just like, them all just sort of being listed one under another. But I thought this was nice and creative. Okay, so a little bit of history, talking about like what the purpose of like the invention of slab serifs is. A little bit of a history as well on this page. And again, anytime in this, but this is very traditional what you're seeing here. This is, you'll notice this in type specimen books over the decades, is oftentimes where there's a block of type, there's a descriptor that tells us what version of the font it is and what size it is. Because again, the idea is to entice designers to buy these typefaces. And what better way to do it than, again, to show it in action and give them specific language that would tell them exactly like how it's being used in case they wanted to use it in that similar way. So this is a great example of like what it says on the assignment sheet for, get to the assignment sheet real quick here. Actually, I think I have a version of this downloaded. So this is a page that discusses point number 5 on the assignment sheet, where we're saying discuss the formal qualities of the typeface, like distinguishing features, geometry, shape, and weight. So here we are seeing that discussion happening. So, it's got a larger X height, let's say, for example. It's got perfectly squared serifs. It's a slightly condensed typeface. So again, just sort of describing those traits. definitely another example of what I was just talking about here. Description of traits. So there was the term on that assignment sheet of stress. Stress is one way of communicating this. So basically, this is what's considered a slightly condensed font, meaning it's slightly taller than it is wide, and that's referred to as vertical stress. So condensed fonts are taller than they are wide. Expanded fonts are wider than they are tall, and that would have horizontal stress. But again, just sort of talking a little bit about the characteristics here. So in this case, they're pointing out that this is an asymmetrical arch, right? Which is important because you're seeing many examples like the line weight being very, very consistent across here, but this is an example of it not being so. Angled top here, you know, long, straight leg or serif, flat tails. So again, just, you know, very much a circular shape for the C. Okay, now we get to start to see some examples. So they're just, again, little blurbs of type, accompanied by us getting to know like what size and weight of the font we're seeing there. And here they're just showing, you know, kind of showcasing side by side the different weights of the font. Cool, still going into some description about some of the anatomy. Cool. Again, notice on this one as well, like very much low color, you know, combinations on all of these pages. Pretty much just one color. Again, not saying you have to do that, but you know, it can be a great challenge to design one of these books with just a single color. And we're seeing some examples of the font in use. And here we're seeing some of the punctuation and special characters. All right, and there's the front and the back cover again. All right, let's see. We're getting there, guys. Got a couple more. I want to open that in its own window. So Memphis is a typeface that looks and feels very much like Rockwell does. You know, it's a very clean, modern slab serif typeface. And at this point, we've now seen 3 of these books, so we don't necessarily need you know, to linger too long on any of these pages, but I very much would like you to still have the opportunity to look at these and see how these are laid out. This is a nice technique where we're actually seeing a paragraph of type, and each line of the paragraph, they are using a different weight, so you can actually see what that looks like, you know, in action. And again, they're telling you like what point size and weight are being used there. Some anatomy of the font. Cool. Very straightforward there. All right, and here we go. Ebony. This is definitely one of my favorite typefaces, Ebony. It's a lot of projects. Again, you'll notice another common denominator here: low color content. One of the reasons, one of the practical reasons why this is the case, guys, is because traditionally when these were made and sent out in the mail, they were sending these things to, you know, thousands and thousands of designers. They were oftentimes printed on newsprint or inexpensive paper. And, you know, the lower the color content, again, like the lower the cost of making these books. So that's kind of the reason why that tradition was originally like set and why we're seeing it in these examples here. Cool. So here we've got another typeface from Adrian Frugier. I love just how clean and simple and professional this book is. This is very common in type specimen books. The same bit of type repeated over and over again, showing the different sizes and then the different weights. So, you know, I would highly encourage you within at least 2 of your pages of your type specimen book to do something similar to what we're seeing right here. Just some blow-ups of some of the features on the fonts. That was a pretty short and sweet one there. Right. Cool. So before I show you guys the physical books and turn my camera on here, after viewing those, let's open up the assignment sheet again so we can all be looking at that. After looking at some of those examples, are there any questions on this yet that kind of come to mind? Anything that you just would love some clarification on?
I don't have any questions. I really like the examples you showed us. Those books are like amazing.
Yeah, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're just beautiful,
Nice
beautiful
book.
books.
Yeah.
And I would encourage you guys, I actually put this up here, you know, don't be afraid. I mean, by all means, please reference these. That's why I put them there. But also search for the term type specimen book on Behance or just Google the term. I mean, you're going to find some amazing stuff. I mean, what I've shown you is just the tip of the iceberg. But if we were to, you know, just going into images where we're not necessarily seeing entire books, but like glimpses of pages, you can't help but get like just inspired by all sorts of examples. Again, some will be highly experimental, some will be very clean, very straightforward. You know, you certainly will see some examples of multiple colors. You know, that's, I think, good to see because everything I showed you is very monochromatic. But you can definitely go outside of what the norm is and go for more colors. I'd have no problem with that. That would be really cool. Let's see. Yeah, in my stack that I've got here, Emerge, or actually I think it's pronounced Emerge. I've got a few books from them here, as well as some stuff from T26 and House Industries and a few others that we'll dig into. But yeah, spend some time, look through some of the stuff. And again, it is okay to use images in these, although most of the examples I showed you didn't really have images. You know, you'll certainly will run into some that do incorporate images. Just keep in mind that the typefaces we still want to be like the focal point. So I'd be okay with like supporting imagery, but we definitely don't want the images themselves to overwhelm by any means. All right. Okay, so why don't we do this, guys? Before we dig into the physical examples, because that'll probably take us about as long as it did to take me, as I took to get through the digital examples. We've been at it for about an hour now. It's probably a good time for us just to take a 10-minute break. When we get back from the break, again, I'll turn my camera on and I will attempt to go through these via camera. I would normally be bringing these into the class and we'd spread them on a table and, you know, you guys can get your hands on them and look at them. But being that we're virtual, I guess this will be, you'll have a hard time seeing the small, like you won't be able to read the type, right? But I think this will still be valuable for you guys to get some ideas in terms of how these things are handled. Okay. So yeah, so let's take a 10-minute break. I am going to go ahead and just mute myself in the meantime. And why don't we say we'll come on back together here at like 4:42. So let's just do a 10-minute break. Okay. So I'll see you guys back here in 10. All right, guys, let's dig into round 2 here. Okay, so I would love to show you guys some examples. I've got a bunch. We probably won't go through them all, but I would love to at least expose you to not only some of these books, but some of these font foundries as well. So let's see here. I am going to restart sharing my video with you guys instead of my screen. We'll see how this goes. I mean, obviously, I'm going to be showing you books via a camera, so there's potential for goofiness here. This may not be great. The other thing that we're going to be battling here is that this is like the worst time of day in terms of light in my office. But I do have a ring light on. We'll kind of we'll see what happens. We'll take it as it comes, and you know, if it works, awesome. If it doesn't, I will try and find some digital copies of these. But here, let me go ahead and I guess start sharing some video with you guys. There we go. So at least based on my preview, I think the ring light will hold up in terms of enough light. So type specimen books. I have a good number from a company that's called House Industries. They probably are my favorite font foundry. They tend to do very, very stylistic type of work. For example, they released a set of typefaces based on the signage from old Las Vegas signs. So this is the cover. Let's see if we can do this. Okay, we can see stuff. So we've got introduction. Essentially, when type became architecture, right? I mean, that's sort of the thing with those old Vegas signs. But again, the way that these are broken down here is they will show each and every one of the typefaces from the family, as well as an accompanying illustration from the inspiration from that typeface. And it goes like this then through the majority of this book. So this one's called Fabulous. This one is called Stardust. Shows it in action, then shows the actual like typeface. And then the individual up there at House that actually designed this. Actually, I tend to take it back. I think this is the original. Yeah, that's the original designer. Their font sets also included like vector clip art that would come with them. So they're showing like the inspiration as well as like the actual clip art that they made. And then they, again, it breaks down into some of the more traditional examples from the specimen book, where you've got like the typeface spelling out something, as well as like the entire character sets underneath them. And from there, it actually turns its attention to some of their older font sets. So they've got like, this is like another set called 3009, sort of like retro futuristic fonts, and so on and so forth. But again, very, at this point, we're now in a very traditional sort of type specimen kind of a book. But that's one from Font, or I should say from House Industries. Are you guys able to see that at all? I mean, is that translating at all via the camera?
Yeah, I was able to see it well.
Okay, cool. So that was a traditional like 8.5 by 11 book from House Industries. This is a smaller one, very similar to what you guys are going to be doing, like on a 5.5 by 5.5. So this one is not specific to one font. This is just a House Industries fonts book. But they do some nice jobs of breaking things down. So this is a font they called Platinum Diamond Gold. They show the different like variations of it, as well as it in action. Something that's not coming across, I'm sure, via the camera, but this is definitely like on a thinner newsprint, like I mentioned to you guys. Most of the sample books I'm going to be showing you guys today are similar from that standpoint. But this just shows their different font sets. Again, shows all of the different fonts in the set. So these are not necessarily showing just one font, but sets that they sell. They actually, they do sell individual fonts, but they mainly sell sets. Let's see here. This is specific to a single font from House Industries. So again, a very different size. they do a lot of funky stuff with printing too. Like this is a cool, like this has like an actual silver ink that again probably doesn't translate very well on the camera, but it's sort of a longer format on this. And again, it will show all of the different weights. So this is specific to one font. This is called the Eames font. All of the different weights are listed here. Brief history on the typeface. Lots of sort of experimental little collage work using that typeface. And more, like there's lots of just sort of, like I said, sort of experimental design to start this out. Just lots of examples of the different weights and the whatnot of this typeface. It does get into a forward, sort of the historical context of this font. Oh, and that's something I have to remember that I want to show you guys. We'll Google that term. I want you guys to be able to see like what the historical context of some fonts. But regardless, here are some, again, more history. Now they're starting to show it in action. So they've kind of themed it along a game, and in each one of these game spots, there's a different weight of the font, which is kind of cool. So fun, funky kind of design. So House Industries, a lot of the stuff that you do has like very sort of retro like feel to it. But yeah, I mean, from there, the book just really kind of breaks down very simply into like this sort of modular grid format, wherein they're just showing the different weights where they've got the entire alphabet typed out, and then little phrases, and then accompanying letter forms and whatnot. But this is a great example. Like, I mean, just page after page of like showcasing these different weights. And it goes on like this for some time. I mean, this is like a 70, how many pages are in this? This is a ridiculous like 100-page types specimen book. I'll stop at page numbers, but yeah, it's like 88 pages. So that's a beast. Let's see, more stuff from House. Some type sample books aren't really books at all. They actually unfold into like posters, which is kind of cool. So this is what font is this from? This might just be House in general. So this was a set called Gerard Fonts, and it's a big poster type specimen thing. Got one more thing from House here. I've got a ton of stuff from House, but for now we'll start with just stop with this one. Again, this is a font called Chalet. This is their specimen book for it. So again, here are all of the weights sort of listed out. Again, brief introduction to the font, and then lots of examples of it in action. They go through each numbered character here, showing you an uppercase, lowercase version. They even made some textiles out of it, which are kind of cool. Those are pillows that they designed with the font. So yeah, so that's some more House Industries stuff. I mentioned earlier, Emerge. They are this is a West Coast font. They're sure West Coast. Yeah, Sacramento, California. I wouldn't necessarily call this a type specimen book so much as they've got like hundreds and hundreds of fonts that they sell. They're a big font foundry. But I bring this up because you can see examples, I think, of, let's see if I can pull up one of these pages. It has fonts on it. So here. So these are all examples of typefaces, fonts. The top header is the name of the font, and then they show like a block of type of the font in action. And then the very bottom of the page, it's probably really, really hard to see, but on the bottom they have in small format like all of the characters in the font sets there. But out of all of the books I have, these are probably the least experimental. I mean, this is about as crazy as they'll get. Like, here's the font being used in a number of different ways. But this is probably, again, like the most straightforward. So this is a font, like, for example, called Mason Sands, and they're just showing it in the different weights. Okay. So very much looks kind of like Lorem Ipsum to me, or some kind of Latin. But this, I mean, every one of the pages in this book are very much sort of the same thing. So there's not necessarily anything else for me to show you guys here, other than, again, just these fonts being used in action. So again, that's certainly something that you can consider for your own book. Cool, I'm going to take it locally for a moment. So probably the most famous font foundry to come out of Chicago would be the T26 font foundry in Chicago, founded by Carlos Segura, who's a phenomenal person and designer. But their type specimen books and font catalogs would ship out like in these like little sacks that they like screen printed on and stuff. And these were just loaded with like typographic goodness, to the point where it was almost like hard to kind of take it all in, because there's like, I mean, there's just this stack of catalogs and posters in these things. Now these are smaller format. So, you know, most of their books are smaller, and this is what, like half sheet. So this is like a 5x7 kind of thing. Let's see. Yeah, it's not quite the size of a sheet of paper, but basically, again, very much these definitely have a very like decided like mood and atmosphere to them. You know, this one's sort of broken down into these like rounded rectangles. But here we go. Like, this is the way that they will display the fonts there. And it's pretty consistent from page to page. So they've got the name of the font up top here, a price, who made the font. I'll tell you what size you're seeing it in here. And then but these are, I wouldn't call this a specimen book so much as this is like more of a catalog. But I show this just because of the way that the pages are laid out. This is sort of something that could inspire. And I do like, always love like their cover and back cover art and designs on these. But again, most of their catalogs are sort of the same way. Again, this is another one that came in that package. And again, it very much just sort of shows the individual fonts one at a time, like so. T26 will send out these catalog packages for free. So if you're interested in getting this type of stuff in the mail, at least they used to. I don't know if they actually, it's been a while since I've gotten one, so maybe I shouldn't necessarily say that. I'll say this, they used to. So I don't know if they still do. If they do, I would totally, you know, give them your mailing address. You get like really cool stuff in the mail, like awesome, like really cool design stuff. But again, lots of these little books. Just that's kind of how they would do their thing. And again, they do have posters of typefaces. So very much like kind of the traditional type specimens, where it's just the alphabet laid out, and then it would usually be accompanied by some kind of large format poster showcasing the particular typeface. Yeah, this is a relatively glamorous small studio, like boutique studio to work at. So you know, at the very least, it's a company you want to be aware of, because they're local. And then again, there'd be like little like postcards that promo typefaces. So, you know, again, I don't think that these are necessarily great examples of type specimen books, but certainly really nice examples of ways in which you can potentially display type. Some of the stuff get pretty colorful. I mean, this is actual designs, lots of designs of all of the type that they have laid out on the side of the poster. A lot of the stuff though that T26 does though is definitely on the more experimental, artistic, avant-garde side. Let's see. All right, I got a few more things I will throw at you guys here. And we can kind of we'll Google a few terms as well. There's a few things I want you guys to kind of feel comfortable with about this. And I want to talk also about expectations for next week in terms of what I'd like for you guys to have. Yeah, so again, just more, a lot of house stuff I have here. So they did a font set for Illustrator by the name of Shag, who does a lot of like, again, like very, very retro sort of themed stuff, these beautiful illustrations. But again, you know, in traditional house industry style, just big, bold graphics. You know, here's an example, guys, of like the hand-drawn sort of stuff. Like they're showing like what the font looked like as it was being drawn by hand. So that's kind of reminiscent about like what that portion of the assignment where I'm asking you guys to, you know, bring the font into Illustrator and on another layer, trace it. Again, just lots of examples of fonts in action being used. So you're seeing, I think, in some cases, some variation, but hopefully some consistency with some of these things as well. And just stylistically, I'll show you guys some of this. I don't know that we need to go through all of the insides of these, but just some more covers from House Industries. Again, just really stylistic, very cool, futuristic, yet retro themed fonts. So there's one. Again, I'm showing like the variations of the font on the back. There's a font that they did a poster for called United Sans, and then there's United Serif. This is another one from House. Lots of color present on this one. So this looks like T26. Yeah, so this is a T26. They actually use this, what font this is called here. I'm sure it would say on the inside, but there's a font that they interlock to make it look like a maze. But again, just very, in this case, pretty traditional looking layouts where again, they've got the name, brief description, every character, and then, you know, a couple of variations in size. Okay, cool. Again, I've got some more here, but again, I think you guys have seen enough. I think it might be better for you guys just to focus as well on the digital stuff. So, all right, I am going to go ahead and start to share my screen again. Let's see here. Are you guys seeing my screen or are you still seeing me?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because like my view of me is still like me. Cool. I'm glad it's working for you guys though. Okay, so let's see. I feel like there was at least one more thing. Oh, yeah. Let me open up that project sheet again because there were a couple of terms and stuff that I just wanted to kind of clarify for you guys. Let's see. Oh, the historical context. So I'm looking here at like the contents of the book. So historical context. This is something that can be a lot of fun. If you choose a pretty classical typeface, you can actually get a lot of cool information about this. So like here, let's just do a couple of Google terms here. If I were to do, I don't know, like Helvetica, for example. So Helvetica historical context, you can see it's actually already coming up, so we'll do that. Cool, so there's a wiki, you know, about that. There's everything you want to know about Helvetica, history and evolution of Helvetica. So I'm by no means going to sit here and like read paragraphs to you guys verbatim, maybe a few things, but I strongly recommend that you guys, you know, find a typeface that does have a pretty robust history, and a lot of them do. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll read a few paragraphs to you guys here off this one. So love it or hate it, Helvetica is one of the world's most commonly used fonts. both in advertising and publishing and urban signage. But to what does it owe its success and widespread usage, and how it has changed over the years? This article will start looking at its invention back in 1957, before going through the various milestones and restyles that have seen it become many international brands' go-to typeface. So its origins, as its name suggests, it's based on Helvetia, the Latin word for Switzerland. Helvetica was created in Switzerland by Edward Hoffman. Hoffman's another like big name in the industry. And for those of you guys who are really interested in Swiss design, spend an afternoon just Googling him. I've got his design book behind me on the bookshelf over here, which is, it's an interesting read. I shouldn't even say read. It's not like something you necessarily read a lot, but it's just loaded with a few hundred pages of pretty experimental designs. It's good stuff. But in any case, so it essentially, Edward Hoffman was director of the Haas Foundry, and decided to commission a freelance designer to create a new font. His aim was to counter the success of this font called Grotesque, which you may have used. It's still a widely used, like one of the most popular fonts in the world. But in 1957, Medinger came up with a set of new characters which he named New Haas Grotesque, and it's a sans serif font with a linear, simple, elegant design. And at this point, I think I'm just kind of probably better to let you guys read through some of this stuff. Probably the most boring thing in the world to sit and listen to somebody read you the history of a font. But Helvetica's definitely got a pretty robust history, as do a number of these fonts. But if you want to avoid something this classic like Helvetica, or maybe you don't have Helvetica, I will point you guys to a resource that you can use to get some really robust, typeface families, font families. Actually, one that would be available to you that I know it's a really robust family and has a cool history would be Avenir. I think that's only default though on a Mac, but one that, a place you guys can go to get robust font families that would be free would just be Google Fonts. If you head over to Google Fonts, Montserrat comes up. That's one of my favorite typefaces. Not all of the fonts on Google Fonts are ideal for this, but like the one I just mentioned that I tend to use in a lot of projects. Montserrat, I love this typeface. And as it turns out, it's got a pretty interesting history. So it's a robust font. You can see here it comes in thin italics, extra light. All of these actually have italicized versions, so I won't read those, but light, regular, medium, semi-bold, bold, extra bold, black. So there's a lot of variations on this. And again, there's a history behind it, let's see. So just using that term, historical context of your font, and you're going to get stuff about it. Here, actually, let's type in Montserrat font because that is probably a location. Yeah, there we go. So typeface. So the Montserrat is here we have a whole wiki page on a font that is relatively new. I mean, this is a project that was released in 2011. So this is a typeface that's only 11 years old, but yet it's got a nice wiki, entry here. So you're not necessarily needing like pages and pages of historical information. Even just a few paragraphs would certainly, suffice for putting together your specimen book. But you definitely want to choose a typeface that, number one, has got a lot of variations, and then number two, at least has some kind of a history. Like you definitely want to know who made the font, right? Like here we can see here, Julieta, I don't know if I'll be able to pronounce this correctly, Ulanovsky, and it was released in 2011. And again, some information. So, and again, not all of the Google fonts are as robust as this, but I will show you how to find the robust ones. So when you are looking through Google Fonts, Let's see here. There is an option here, and it's not an intuitive one. Let's see. Yeah, number of styles. That's what you want. So basically sort by number of styles and bring that like up. So this is all fonts that have at least 10 different variations or weights, but you can actually go all the way up. Like these are now have 18 variations or more. That's robust. I mean, that's a, so there's 1,359 fonts that are free on here that have 18 or more variations. And not all of these will be exciting. I'm not necessarily saying that that all 1,300 of these are awesome. But this is a great place to start if you don't have a font on your computer that perhaps that you want to use. So yeah, I'm sorry, it's 43 of these families. Not there's a total of 1,300 here. So 18 might be a little bit on the rich side. I would say 10 and above, pretty good. I mean, Monstrat, you can see here, has 12. So yeah, so that's a great resource to take advantage of. And again, these are free. You can just download the entire set, install them on your computer, and you're good to go. But again, please, before devoting yourself to just one, like it says in the assignment sheet there, consider strongly downloading a group of a few of these typefaces, finding some history and whatnot, and going from there. So what I'll be looking for from you all for next week, let's discuss that. I'll open up to questions and we'll wrap up here. On the assignment sheet, there are some steps. So let's talk about the steps here. What I would like for you guys to do for next class is the first 3 steps, where it's essentially the research. For next class, I'd like you guys to all have a few typefaces that you're considering using for this project. I don't necessarily have a number in mind. Certainly more than 1, probably less than 6. So somewhere in there. For each of those, so let's just say, let's use a round or a middle number, like 3 in this case. Let's say you have 3 fonts you're considering. Start to gather some of the supporting text for those fonts in a Word doc. Word doc is fine. I know it says InDesign file here as well, but if you don't know how to link a Word doc to an InDesign file, I can certainly show you how to do that. So a Word file is fine. Step 2 is begin designing. What you can start to do, and this would work for any of your 3 typefaces, start designing some basic grids. You don't have to fill them out at this point, but figure out a few of what your pages would look like and just basically create a grid of them. That's something you can do in InDesign. It's something that you can do in Illustrator, but essentially what I'm looking for you to do is just be able to present a few ideas for some grids, not for the entire 16-page book, but for some of the books, or some of the pages, I'm sorry. And then potentially research the, research the font, research the foundry or the designer that made it, have a good idea of when it was created, maybe why it was created as well. That will allow us to at least have a good conversation next week, next class. What we'll then do is it'll be I won't necessarily lecture nearly as long as I am here today. I might talk about 20 minutes next class. I do want to do a demo for you guys, as well as have you watch a video, but I'll end up using certainly less than an hour of class time, and I will turn things over to you guys to begin starting to do some concept designs. For a week from today, for next Tuesday, you'll have one of those fonts chosen, and I'd like to see layouts for 8 of the 16 pages. And we'll do a critique on those. Okay. So again, to recap that, for next class, steps 1, 2, and 3, all research stuff, gathering into documents, creating some grids. Week from today, we'll do a critique on 8 of the pages of the 16. Again, don't design all 16, guys, because if there's a lot of changes that need to happen, I don't want you to necessarily have to revise like 16 pages. It's much easier to revise 8 and then make the other 8 pages. Okay. Any questions? Questions, comments, concerns?
I don't really know.
Cool. So have some fun with this. You know, again, avoid the temptation just to grab like the first font that you find and run with it. Yeah, I think again, I'll use that roundabout number in that section, not round at all. I guess it's a totally odd number, but 3 is a good number, excuse me, to come back with for next class. If you have more, that's fine. You know, and again, we'll have a conversation. Hopefully by the end of next class, you'll know exactly what typeface that you're going to go with. So it's not there yet, but I will make it for you guys real quick so that we know it's there. On the Google Drive, there is going to be a folder that is called Assignment 3 Book. And in the Assignment 3 folder, there is going to be a folder called Parts 1 through 3 Process and Research. And that's where you guys can submit your materials. So you'll want to be prepared for kind of an informal presentation for next class. Be willing to potentially talk us through your materials. If you'd like, you're more than welcome. I can set you up to share your screen if you'd like, and you can kind of walk us through stuff. But definitely be prepared to kind of talk about like the directions that you're thinking about taking this project, and we'll go from there. All right. All right, guys. Well, that will do it then for today. As always, if you have any questions between now and next class, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. There was a lot that we went through today, so I'm definitely going to have this video posted up on YouTube, and I will put the link to it in our class. It takes, for a full class like this, it takes about an hour for that to process. So it'll be in there this evening at some point. Again, I'll put the link for that in the week 3 area here. In the description, it'll end up the link for today's recording. Will be right up in this area here, just in case you want to review anything from that. All right, guys, go into the world, pick some fonts, I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with for next one.
Sounds good.
All right. Let's see.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you do the same, Kelly. And you too, Cam. We'll see you guys.